Welcome back to Hot Flashbacks. I'm your host, Molly Ward, and today's guest looks really nice in a pair of white headphones. Those are nice headphones. They kind of like bring out your eyes. There's like immediately uncomfortable with video call compliments. Jenna, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thanks, Molly. I'm good. I'm catching up with you.
Yeah.
An old friend who I've known for what? 11, 12 years?
Longer than that?
It's there.
It's there.
It's in that realm. I don't know. I just had to remind you of your own math.
Yeah.
Your own job.
So, I used to sing this song in Girl Scouts. Make new friends, but keep the old. Do you know that? No,
I wasn't a Girl Scout, but I'm just learning that you were a Girl
Scout,
which is
shocking development. I'm going to have to auto-tune that. Anyway, I don't know like all the words. I just know the four sentences. Make new friends, but keep the old. One is silver and the other is gold. I know it's like there's probably more to the song. We used to sing that. Anyway, Jenna, you are gold for me. So.
Oh, wow. I was going to guess like bronze, maybe.
No.
I'm still on the platform, but.
So how do we know each other? Tell our listeners.
We met over a decade ago working at a university and letting students run our lives.
This is why we left.
Bonding over all of the trauma
of
working with college students.
Yeah.
Which is actually it is a great career in a lot of ways. But yes, that's how we met.
Yeah. And so let's see, that had to have been in 2008, 9. Okay. How old are you? Our viewers need to know.
I'm 37 and a half.
Okay. I'm here to report that she has no wrinkles, by the way. I see none. Wait, put your face closer to the camera. Nope, none. Oh yeah.
Them.
No, what are those called on the eyebrows? I got Botox for that once.
The number 11s.
Yeah, it's my favorite number.
I've got Botox in a month, so how about that?
Oh really? So do you do it regularly?
Well, like every 6 months.
Okay.
I just get a little.
Yeah, I had it done one time, but it was expensive, and then I just kind of forgot about it. So, and I don't have to look at my own face, so I kind of realized I have frown lines or whatever they're called, 11s, whatever you just called them, but I don't have to see them. So, I mean, I rarely look in the mirror. So,
well, that's great. I was kind of like, if it makes me feel good, why not?
Yeah, it looked really nice, though. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like if I spent less money on my dog's surgeries, I would be able to have Botox. So unfortunately for me, my dogs need surgery. So yeah, no Botox, but it did look good and I liked it. And I thought to myself, Molly, you should do this again so you don't look so haggardly. But alas,
you do not look haggardly. I mean, I tell them I still need to be able to move. People still need to know when I'm pissed at them. Right.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's not, let's freeze the face, but
no,
just give her some support.
I get that. I think you should do whatever feels good and that you can afford because Botox is expensive.
That too.
I'm glad to be chatting with you today. And when you and I were emailing, I guess is the correct word. We talked a little bit about what we want to talk about today and changes that we go through in our middle ages. And I'm excited to be able to talk to you today about your sober journey, your sobriety.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So how long have you been? Well, let's clarify first, because I feel like there's terminology about being sober and people can use it differently. So tell me what it means to you or how it applies in your life.
Yeah. For me, it means alcohol free. So that was the the substance that I felt like was most destructive in my life, and things that I didn't really like how I was feeling anymore about it. So for me, that means alcohol free. You're right, though. There's lots of definitions where it can mean like no substances of any choice.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think for people, it can mean different things.
Yeah. And I think most people think of it in terms of alcohol, but like I have some friends who don't drink alcohol, but may do other things, psychedelics, mushrooms.
Yeah. Some of the slang is like California sober.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I've heard that because Demi Lovato said that. And then I had to look it up. So
yeah, I feel like there's a lot of people who are coming in California sober, right? Like
yes.
Identified alcohol as not sitting well with everyone.
Yeah. So when did that start for you and sort of thinking about doing it? And tell me, was there like a point at which you decided like enough is enough?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, during the early lockdown of the pandemic, I feel like maybe I had a little bit of an inverse experience than a lot of people. I was reading about and hearing friends being like, I'm drinking so much at home because we were locked up at home. And, I'd gone in for some physical at some point in early 2021. And the doctors, as they should have been, were asking people about their habits. And they asked me about mine. And at that point, I realized I was like, I haven't had alcohol in 10 months. And it was this moment that I didn't even realize it. And I started to think through like the change that had for me in my body. And I just was not aware of it until I was directly confronted with it. But it also made me really start to open my eyes to like how much of my social life revolved around alcohol and drinking. So much so that, when the world opened back up a little bit and when I started dating again, I could see some of that slippery slope happening for me, and being social and again, revolving around drinking.
So, okay. So you like accidentally went sober.
I did.
Really?
It was not I like at that time, I didn't really keep alcohol in the house.
Yeah. So because you were like a social drinker, you're going out and then there was nowhere to go out. And so you just kind of like stopped.
Correct.
Like not in any way to say like this journey is easy for anybody, but that's kind of like amazing. Like to just, because for some people, there's physical withdrawals, there's a lot of things that can really complicate it and make it really difficult. So for you to just, I was watching an interview with Tom Holland recently, and he was like, yeah, I decided to be sober for Sober January. And he's like, and then 3 days into it, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't stop thinking about drinking. I didn't realize how much I depended on it and how used to it I was. And so I made it through January. He's like, but I thought about it every single day. He's like, so then I told myself, like, I'm going to do it to February just because like I want to make, anyway, he says it better than I do, but he talks about how really hard it was, how every single day was a choice. And so I'm sure you still experience days like that or moments like that. But the fact that because so much of it was social, you were able to just kind of like not. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, look at me. I get a like coin in 2 months.
Right. And I think this is the scary thing about alcohol that I really had a hard time wrapping my head around, was because my problematic behaviors and drinking and decisions around alcohol weren't what we think of as a quote unquote alcoholic, right? I have a successful job. I have friendships. I, am not drunk every day, or I don't need to experience it. So therefore I have no problems with alcohol. And I think that was the scary thing for me to realize, is like alcoholism and problematic drinking behavior is really on this very big spectrum. And just because you're not at one end of it doesn't mean you have zero problems. And that this is a safe habit for you to continue.
Yeah. I think I would refer to that as like being a functional alcoholic, right? Like someone who functions, goes to work, does all the things, takes care of their children, takes care of their dog, whatever, cleans their hamster cage out on a regular basis. And then, but also is like consuming a lot of alcohol and maybe not even every day. Right. So then there's like binge drinking problem. And then there's like daily alcohol use disorder, I just made it up. Yeah. So you're right. It is kind of like, and I think depending on which side of the coin you're on, you can skew it one way. So you could say, well, I'm not getting drunk. I'm just having glasses of wine every single night. Or, well, I'm only getting really shitty twice a week. And the other days I'm not doing anything. So that doesn't mean it's not a problem. How does someone decide that they have a problem? Like when did you recognize that was an issue?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that's really different for everybody. I think, again, the things in my mind around like alcoholism, right, was like rock bottom, this term that I feel like have associated with alcoholism and, what we would identify as problematic behavior. I don't think that I necessarily had a rock bottom moment, but again,
I mean, I feel like I've bared witness to a few rock bottom moments that we've both had that I feel like because we were young seemed okay.
Yeah.
I don't mean that in a mean way. Like, I think if you had some of the things that we did in our 20s, like if you were doing that now, you would be like, yeah, I have a problem, right?
Maybe though. But I think sometimes alcoholism and just drinking in general has been so normalized. And, you and I met in New Orleans, a city that day in and day out does have alcohol as a center pinpoint. And it doesn't mean that everybody there is the same level. Some of us, we have a different response to this substance. And it's not somebody that I really look to, Laura McCowan. She says it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. And I think that really clicked for me. Like, okay, I don't have the same response as other people. And that isn't my fault, but it is my responsibility to do something about it. But for me, in terms of the behavioral change, I don't think it came from one moment where I was like, that night was really bad and now I have to do something about it. I think it was this kind of past analysis of the moments that I looked at in my life that I was the least proud of, or the moments that I felt most out of control or the most like unsafe. The common denominator for me was alcohol. And it was fueled by this idea of like having fun and being social. And I'm more fun when I'm in this space. But looking back and realizing like that's super reckless. And, again, some of the worst things that happened to me were because partly fueled at least by alcohol. And I think the other thing that I realized is like alcoholism runs in my family. I didn't know that until much, much later in my life. And I think for me, that was also the cursor of my job is to change and be a cycle breaker with this. And maybe other people have heard this, but I love Jamie Lee Curtis is like over 20 years sober. And she said, the greatest legacy, I'm paraphrasing here, but the greatest legacy in my life will be if I can stay sober. That is her number one priority. If I can do this, this is the greatest legacy I will leave in my life. And so you're talking about somebody who's like a huge star, an Academy Award winner, talking about their legacy is actually their sobriety.
Yeah.
I thought that carried a lot of weight for me in thinking about the early days of that journey.
Yeah. I think when you talk about rock bottom, I think that is what people think of when it comes to sobriety or addiction of most types, right? That like that it has to get bad enough for you to like recognize. But I actually think that what you said about wanting it for other reasons can be really powerful too, because I don't know, and I've not been through recovery, but I feel like we can excuse away sort of like these one-time incidents or these like rock bottoms or these bad situations, or, okay, well, now I fixed that, so that won't happen again. And so it's not the drinking. But I think that it makes sense to me, or maybe just that I would find a lot of success in it if it was something that I had sort of these a long-term vision for, like my health, like maybe because as opposed to just like I had a really embarrassing night and now I'm just going to stop drinking. Because people say that all the time after they, right? We would be in our 20s like, oh, last night was crazy. That was so dumb. We're never drinking again for like 8 hours, And so, yeah, I think that the idea that you had sort of this, I don't know, like awakening of like long-term impacts or, things you want for your body or your health or your future or your family. It seems to me like I would need something like that to keep me focused on the goal.
Yeah. I think it, again, different for everybody, because I also think if you sat me down now in my 20s and were like, you're going to not have alcohol anymore for the rest of your life, that would feel extremely overwhelming, right? Like thinking about making a decision right now that you have to carry with you the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of power in like, it's just today. It is right now. And in this moment, I am stronger than maybe this like fleeting feeling.
Yeah.
And there's that power, kind of referencing like Tom Holland's interview that you did in The Small Bite. This is a daily choice that I have to make.
Do you think that, with age comes wisdom? Let's hope. Because that's the one thing I am looking forward to about getting older, is that I'm also going to be smarter, apparently. The trajectory is not looking good though. I'm in a really slow climb to being smarter. So I'm hoping at some point this wisdom thing is going to really come through. But do you think that it's easier? Does it get easier as you get older to make hard decisions every day?
I don't know if it gets easier, or if you are at a point where you're unwilling to look away.
Yeah.
I think we were talking about this kind of early on in our catching up. When you're in your 20s, you feel like everything is ahead of you. You have so much time. Time is never an issue. And I think sometimes time can force your hand a little bit to being unwilling to look away from the things that you don't like. And one thing that I think I love about getting older is the idea that I can be willing to look and also change it. I can change it right now. And I think there's power in that.
Yeah. I remember a lot of times in my life that I would have these thoughts of like, I should be better at said thing. Not necessarily like, knitting or, playing backgammon, but like that I want to be a better person in some way. And it felt really unattainable when I was younger. The older I get, the more I'm like, oh, I have the tools and the willpower and the ability to change, to grow, to be different than I was before. And that is nice. I feel like it gives you this sort of sense of confidence that, you can, it's cliche, like be who you want to be, but like you can really work on yourself as a person so that you can be the kind of person you want it to be. And I don't feel like I could do that in my 20s. And part of that is, I think, right, our maturity. And as we talked about before, our brain development, like you're still not even really able to make good decisions until you're like 27. So the idea that I would change my personality or become a better person just seems so far-fetched and ridiculous. And I think that is nice about getting older, is sort of this idea that you're in control of you. And for the most part, you can make adjustments about what that looks like and who you want to be, what kind of person you want to be. And that can be really empowering, or it feels more free, I guess.
Absolutely. I mean, when I think about like the person that I want to be, I hope that when I'm at the end of my life, somebody would say like, she was unafraid to like change and be better. Like that is something that I don't want to be as I grow older, is just somebody who's like settled and stagnant. But again, I think if you're faced with that dilemma of like, better, then you should do it. And that can, I think, happen to us at every age. And I think that's the beautiful part about getting older, is you start learning that and seeing that and being open to it. And it's not a judgment of your past self. It's gotten you to this point.
Well, and I think we want to fit in so bad, right? I mean, even gosh, until my early 30s, I just wanted to fit in, I just wanted to feel like I had space in this world and that I had a reason to be here and that people wanted me in their lives. And we do a lot of things to fit in. And in New Orleans in particular, as you sort of referenced, right, we have this like heavy culture around alcohol. And so it feels like it'd be hard not to. Like, I don't, me now at 43 can't really imagine what it would be like to live in New Orleans and be sober. Like, because so much of my experience there was not that like, it sounds hard. Like, but what I was saying earlier about doing difficult things as you get older, I heard this basketball coach is talking about how, like, she was talking to her team. She was saying, I hear people say a lot, like, I'm just, it's going to get easier. It's going to be better soon. Things are going to get easier soon. And she's like, I just want you to know, and I think about this a lot so that I could tell my kids also to be prepared that, like, it doesn't get easier. I mean, you want it to, right? I mean, in theory, you're like, I'm going to get older and things are just going to like happen. But it doesn't get easier. Some people just get better at doing hard. And I think, what she said was, some people get better at doing difficult things and some people don't. But life doesn't get easier. You just get better at handling hard stuff, which is really depressing though, when I say it, right?
Does it?
I don't know. I don't want to handle hard things my whole life. I want something to be easy.
Yeah. And maybe part of that is like tapping into like resources. For me, like a huge part of this sober journey has been hinging and putting myself in the way of resources. Right. And in my 20s, I never would have thought, oh, I can go to other people. I can seek the wisdom of other people who've been down this road, because I was like, I can do it. I know better. And there is beauty in being like, I don't know. I don't know. I can be curious and learn from the mistakes of other people and hear their wisdom and take what serves me best. And maybe that's what makes it a little bit easier, is we can, if we're open to it, utilizing our resources that are there for us.
Yeah. And having access to resources and knowing that you have that, I think is big time. Or having people in your corner. Like, I can imagine that there were probably people in your life who were really helpful to you, like in the beginning of your journey.
Yes. Yeah. But I will say, it's also scary to like change something that I think people have known about you and then be like, oh, my identity is different now. This is just a totally different me. Get to know her now. And that was a hard narrative shift, I think, for some people.
Does it feel different? Like, do you feel like you're different? Dramatic pause.
I think, I think I am in a much more like loving and soft place with myself.
Yeah.
Than I was.
You were pretty tough on yourself in your 20s.
Yeah.
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 You gave yourself a hard time for a lot of stuff. Like, just in like I'm glad to know that you take better care of yourself in that way now, because, we can talk about loving ourselves and we saying that. And I don't think that everybody truly ever gets to know. Not everyone gets to know what that's like. You're pretty tough on yourself. You expected a lot of yourself and you took on a lot of responsibility for other people, for other people's mistakes, for trauma that you have that wasn't your fault. And I think you took a lot of that on, and you had a lot of like, you were tough on yourself and didn't seem like you really wanted to like embrace yourself in that way. And so it's really cool to know that being sober has helped you to see yourself for who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think, alcohol afforded me this mask socially. Like for me, that's what it was, right? I thought I'm a better, funner friend, more fun friend. Funner.
We're not into grammar on this. Fine. Say what you want.
Okay, good. I'm more fun to be with. I I contribute to the experience of other people when I'm in that headspace, and realizing like I have a lot to offer, and being okay with showing up exactly as I am, instead of being responsible for everybody else having a great time. And also then on the back end realizing like, no, that wasn't a great time for other people. You know, I think there's a lot of moments that I really had to look at that I was like, that was difficult to sometimes sit with,
Mm-hmm.
and realize like I'm not proud of those moments, but I also can have some hold empathy and space for where I was.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I think like forgiveness as you get older becomes important, because you do make mistakes and you do things you never thought you'd do. No matter what, spectrum that's on, right? Like you hurt people, you make mistakes, and being able to forgive yourself now and recognizing that you were in a different place, not excuses, just realities of saying like, yes, the me that exists now, would have never done that. But you can forgive yourself for things that you've done to yourself or to others. Otherwise, I think getting old probably would be really tough. Like if you're carrying all of that with you, right? Like we've all harmed people. We've all hurt people. We've all hurt ourselves. We've all done things that, if we could do it again, we wouldn't. And forgiveness to your younger self for a lot of those things, I think is really important in self-love and moving forward, in your middle ages, and being able to accept who you are and who you aren't.
Yep. That's beautifully said. That's beautifully said.
Thank you.
I like that.
I was leaving the awkward silence so that our listeners could just like bask in the glow of what I said, and maybe write it down as something they want to tell other people. No. Okay.
They should.
They should. Are there things that you're doing now that you don't think you would have been able to do when you were using alcohol as like a coping mechanism or a mask, that you're too afraid to do, or relationships that you're having that are way better now than you think that they would have been when you were still drinking?
Yeah, I think that the relationship I have with my partner now is more authentic and just more stable, right? Because I'm more authentic. I'm more stable. The friendships that I have, I think now are supportive of that lifestyle, are more authentic, and it has bred a space for me to have more deep relationships with people, right? Because it isn't just this, let's go out to happy hour and drink hours on end, laughing and like having fun, and all those. There are great memories that come with that too. But I think the way that I can show up even in friendships now gives me space to actually get to know these people and to have really deep conversations. And that has been such a joy of this, but that's also showing up and being like, hey, I don't drink. So what are the alternatives to what we can do together? And I know that can be a pivot for people who might have somebody who is on a sober journey in their life. Is, the natural suggestion is like, let's go grab a drink. Like, how many times have we said that or done that or even thought that?
Yeah.
But that's where I have to be in the driver's seat, because my sobriety is the most important thing. So I have to be ready to lead that time and that intensity with it.
Yeah. I experienced that in New Orleans. You go to happy hour, you go have a drink, like that's what you do. And in Utah, we're not allowed to have happy hour, first of all. So there's none of that.
Really?
Yeah, they're not into the fun here. not into the fun, or not into the good deals, I guess, is maybe what it is. But also a lot of people here don't drink coffee. And so usually you would ask someone like, I would like, hey, let's go grab a beer after work, or like, let's meet up and have a coffee. Here, you don't really do those things. So here you're like, let's get together and have cheese. Do you want to have some cheese with me? Like that's what I think I've been saying to people, which would explain why I don't have a lot of friends. But
well, that's sad because cheese is amazing.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I think we could probably move the needle on this. Like, instead of asking folks, do you want to grab a beer or let's go get coffee? Let's go get cheese seems to kind of roll right off the tongue for me. I don't know.
I love that.
Me
I love
too.
that. I think that's, it's getting really creative.
It's finally putting those dairy-free people where they need to be uncomfortable. It's good enough for you to be uncomfortable with the beer. So it's time that all those dairy-free people just feel weird when people ask them if they want to have cheese.
Take some Lactaid.
Deal
You'll
with
be
it.
fine.
Yeah, it's going to be okay. Okay, so on that note, not the cheese note. I mean, I could talk about cheese more. That feels like a different episode. I don't like blue cheese though. It's gross. Do you like blue cheese?
I love blue cheese.
Do you really?
I love it. Oh my gosh. Stink it up. I love it.
It's not okay. I don't mind that it stinks. This is weird. I don't mind that it smells bad. I just mind that it tastes bad.
Oh man.
Do you like Swiss cheese?
I love it.
Okay, me too. I do really like Swiss cheese, and a lot of people think that like tastes bad and smells bad. So
I don't know that I've had cheese I don't like, to be honest with you. Maybe this needs to be my new mission. Find a cheese I don't like.
You know what we could do? Have cheese together, like on video. Like you bring cheese, I'll bring cheese.
Okay. I'm very into this.
It's a date. Okay. Also because like I don't have to smell your blue cheese. So like this is great.
This is the perfect setup.
Yeah, we actually can't be friends in person because of the blue cheese situation. So this online friendship is where it's at right now. Would you say that like your definition of fun has changed? Like you just said, right? The old you was like, this is the way that alcohol lowers your inhibition and it allows you to sort of have fun. Did you have to relearn like how to be fun or how to let your guard down so that you could be that person? Cause that person is still there, right? Like I think alcohol, I'm not a scientist, but I am a chemist. And I think alcohol lowers the inhibitions, but it doesn't necessarily mean that like that parts of you aren't still there, right? Cause I would think of an example of like someone who would get really angry and upset when they're drinking. And then people would say, oh, well, they were drunk. And so that's why they get so mad and like break things. And I'm like, yeah, but alcohol just sort of like lowers that wall that makes them feel like it's okay to do those things, which means in my mind anyway, again, not a scientist, those things still live within that person. Like they're still angry. They still have a temper. Alcohol just sort of like opens the floodgate a little bit more. So I'm saying like, you're a fun person. How did you relearn to be fun without it? And how did that feel?
Yeah, I think it was getting really comfortable and candidly doing a lot of therapy around like this idea of I'm responsible for everybody else's good time, right? Like I have to have the pulse on everybody in the room and make sure everybody is having a good time. I really took that on as like my responsibility, and alcohol made me feel like I could do that. I know if you're listening, you might be scrunching up your number 11s in your eyebrows right now and being like, what in the world? Alcohol would not do that, Jenna. But for me, it did. It made me feel like I was a more fun and a more enjoyable person to be around. And being sober has opened me up to realize like my authentic self is fun. And if it's not enough for somebody, that's okay. That just means like we can be cordial, but it doesn't mean we have to be like friends who hang out on the regular. But I think that comes from a place of like having to, again, being unwilling to look away from yourself.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And also, I guess, not just unwilling to look away, but like wanting to look. I think you have, when I go to the bathroom, I need you to tell me, like, if I have like some, like a poppy seed in my teeth, like I need you to tell me. Because the thing is like, I'm not going to look in the mirror. Like it's just not something that I do. When I go to the bathroom and then I have to wash my hands, there's a giant mirror there. I don't look in it. I probably should like see if my hair looks nice, see if I have something in my teeth or like if there's a bat in the cave. Like my life would probably be better if I did those things, but I've realized I really don't want to look in the mirror. Like I'm just being honest about it. Like I really don't want to, because I generally, when I do, I get like, low self-esteem. Like, look at my 11s. What, this is my life. Like what, so I just don't. And so I do think there has to be like some level of like wanting to look inward or wanting to look at yourself and say like, where am I at? Where do I want to be? And not just that you can't ignore it any longer. Cause I think I could I could have a poppy seed in my teeth for like 7 months.
What?
No, I'm kidding.
That would drive.
I saw your look and you're like, that is alarming. You need to brush your teeth, Molly. Yeah. I do brush my teeth. I'm just saying, like, if I had breakfast and I had a poppy seed bagel and I got a poppy seed in between my teeth and I didn't have any friends or I worked like remote, I would never know until I went to bed at night and brushed my teeth again, because that's how often I look in the mirror.
That's the literal mirror and the metaphorical mirror.
It's both. It's both.
Like it's better. Okay.
I think it's both. Oh, metaphorical mirror. This podcast is getting so deep, I must say. So what do you like? Tell me what you do for fun, because I'm imagining that has changed with age and also with sobriety.
Yes and no. I mean, I think I did have to like learn about being comfortable in settings where alcohol was still going to be there. People were still going to be drinking in a way that I can't, like that just doesn't work for me anymore. And I had to learn that, I think, because I lived in New Orleans at the time that I made this decision. And if I had not, there were a lot of things I was going to be unable to do anymore. But I think it also I started the journey in a place of a little bit of inauthenticity. And what I mean by that is like when I would go to like a parade or Mardi Gras, I would just say, oh, I have to be up and work tomorrow morning. So I can't really drink tonight. It wasn't from an authentic place of telling people, actually, I've made this decision to not have alcohol anymore, because I was afraid of the response and I was afraid of answering questions that I didn't even know the answer to.
Yeah.
And I think also afraid of judgment, right? What does this say about me? Are people immediately thinking I'm an alcoholic? And that my own internal judgment around that.
Why is it like so much more appropriate to be with your friends or with people or coworkers and say like, oh, I can't have that because I'm watching my carbs, than it is to say like, oh, I can't have that because I'm watching my alcohol.
Yes.
It feels like it should be similar. Although I will say people do throw shade when you like mention that you're on a diet. People kind of like, come on, just have a croissant. I'm like, no, I don't want a croissant, bro. So yeah, probably something similar, right? Is like, I don't know, maybe because I'm old now. I don't know what 25-year-old me would have said. But I think if someone said to me like, oh, I'm sober now, I would just be like, cool. Awesome. But back then, I don't know. I might have been one of those people to be like, come on, it's just a Thursday, like have a thing, just one. But I also think saying I'm sober is different from saying there's a respect level that I think is necessary. That if somebody told me like I am sober, that there's like a level of respect that's required, and like you don't push that. Just like there are other things I think you don't push on people. But I think in my 20s, I probably would have been like, come on, Jenna, suck it up.
Well, I mean, I hate thinking about it. Like, and thinking if somebody would have told me that, would I have been an enabler and somebody who wouldn't have been supportive of it? And what I can tell you is like, I enabled my own self. So I probably would have been somebody who wasn't a real safe place for somebody. And that sucks to say and know, but I'm also, again, wisdom, right? Like now if somebody says it for any reason, I'm like, yeah, great. Good. We good. I don't need to know the reason why.
Yeah.
Right. But I think I prepared myself for so many questions, and I'm still like a newbie in this journey. I'm still new in this journey. I mean, there are people who have done this for decades of their life. And so I am in the infant stages of that at what? I looked at my calendar today, 917 days.
Dang. Good for you.
You know, that's still, but I'm still like, you're still learning.
Yeah.
You're still learning about it.
Yeah. So what does fun look like now? You're old. You don't go to the bars. Like, what do you do?
I mean, I would still say I do the same things, right?
Yeah.
Like, I still go to, like, concerts have always been a part of me. And I think about the experiences that I had with concerts and the amount that I was drinking at a concert where, you know, I had a few moments and memories, and now going to a concert is so much more vivid. I have the entire memory. I'm able to remember all of those things. So concerts are still huge. What I love too is I feel like now more and more people are exploring their relationship with alcohol, and bars and social places are also having to be responsible for that because it's a bottom line of their business. So there are a lot more bars that have mocktails or will make you something different. And I'm comfortable in that space. I know not everybody has that. And again, I think you have to make the best decision with your sobriety in mind. And if a bar isn't the place, then finding the other places. I still feel okay about that. And I'm able to go and like be social for what it is.
Yeah.
So I would say like continue all of the same things I was doing before.
Yeah. This is more like a advice for Molly time. So I always feel like I want to be respectful, but everybody's different. So like if like you came over to my house and I wanted to have a vodka tonic, is that something like you want me to ask you about before I do it? Or like, cause I know everybody's different, but like, if we're going to like social norm something here, like what is a way that can be helpful for people who are not sober to engage in friendships and relationships with people who are and still be respectful of them? What would you say to someone who is having a friendship with someone who is sober and how they sort of handle it or talk about it? And I know you're just like one person. You're not like representing the community is like, you know, not everybody's the same, but like from your perspective, what would you like that would make you comfortable?
Yeah, I guess for me, thank you for sharing that, because there's nothing like the pressure of representing so many people who have also, again, been doing this for much, much longer than you, and you're still in the infant stages.
I will put like a little disclaimer in the show notes. Jenna does not represent all sober people, just to make it super clear.
Fair.
But like, I think you've experienced some things and probably have sober friends or have been to meetings with other people that you might be able to shed some light on and help people who don't know socially, like how to act, how to be polite, what's okay, what's not okay. Like, what is a good way to go about that?
Yeah, I think the way that I like it is you're still meeting new people, especially in my job. I travel a lot. I meet a ton of new people all the time in consulting, and the assumption of like, can I get you a beer? Would you like a glass of wine? Those seem to be very innate for people, especially around meals and settings where you're hosting people, instead of, and this is going to feel like so simple, but it really is that simple of like, what can I get you to drink? And that can be anything, right? And you can share the plethora of options you have. And I think then it always gives me the power in saying like, yeah, the Diet Coke is great. Do you have tea? Do you have your bubbly water? Whatever that is.
A glass of milk?
Yeah.
Do you ever just like, you're at someone's house and you're like, yeah, actually, I'm really glad you offered. Do you have any 2%? I could really go for a cold glass of 2%.
2%?
There's a certain age at which I feel like you're supposed to stop just like drinking milk. Like if I went out with someone and like, you know, we just got like some spin dip at Applebee's and we're just like chilling and I got like a Diet Coke and you had a milk. Like, I don't know about that.
Power move. Power move.
I'd be like, wow, look how brave she is. All her dairy.
Big Milk is going to come for us now. And they're going to want to sponsor this podcast and saying, wow,
you're right.
Milk still spiked.
Listen,
we can't explain it.
Just like, I can't remember the last time I sat down with someone who just drank a glass of milk, like an adult. Maybe we should bring that back too.
Maybe I should just test that little theory sometime.
Will you please? Especially if you meet someone new, they invite you to like have a coffee or a dinner or like a snack. And you just like, hey, Jenna, did you want to go for a snack? And you're like, yeah, that sounds great. I'll meet you at Chili's and then you just order a milk. Such a good idea.
Yeah, I love that idea. Let's make it happen.
Keep us posted. This is like, we're going back to like inclusive language, really, right? Like,
yeah, but I like how you're thinking.
Oh, thank you. I do that on occasion. I like just the inclusive idea of just saying like, would you like something to drink, as opposed to offering something specific, is a really easy way to just make people feel comfortable. Kind of like along the same lines of like, I was like assuming sexuality is another one, right? Where it's like people will make assumptions about your sexuality and then it puts it on you to have to like correct or explain. Is that people say, oh, okay, where's your husband? And I'm like, okay, now I have to correct you. And that feels weird. It also just would have been more inclusive if you had just said like, do you have a partner? Are you married? Do you have a spouse? Like there's a couple different ways, I think, to word it, but it's uncomfortable to correct people. And so I think if we, like what you're saying makes a lot of sense, is that we don't have to give someone the opportunity to have to correct us, because then it's uncomfortable for them. And then it feels weird. And maybe they don't want to correct you, or they don't want to like just take nothing because it feels rude. Like you came to their house and they offered you a gin and tonic and you just said no. And now I'm never inviting you again.
Yeah, I think that's such a good reframe of that, that we take away the ability for people to feel uncomfortable and feel like, I have to do the correcting. And again, I think very early on in this journey, I was so afraid of the questions I would get. The questions were the scariest part for me.
Yeah.
And I think having to explain to somebody something, so I would come up with that narrative. But if you could take that away, and I think if you're somebody who's determining a social event and you may not even know, check out a menu before you go. Does it have like all the options for people to be able to still be social? And like maybe even just for type A and anxious people, send out that menu ahead of time, right? Like everybody appreciates that. But that's something I get really good at doing, is making sure, hey, if I go out somewhere, are they going to have something else other than water? Water invites a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm.
Now I feel, I'm fine with that. Or I'm cheap as hell and I'll bring my own water if you don't have anything to offer me. Let me roll up with my LaCroix.
You just put like small slices of lemon in your purse just to keep everybody out of your business. Just like tossing it in the water. I think it feels like really deep stuff is going to come out of my mouth right now. There's this like evolution of self-acceptance that happens like with what you're telling me. I think about like an evolution of also someone who's coming out has a very similar process of like, okay, I'm okay. Like you said, you were like, I'm ready to be sober for myself, but I don't know if I'm ready to talk about it. And I don't know what the questions are going to be. I don't know how I'm going to answer them. And so then maybe it starts with your circle of people, right? And then eventually that grows. And then eventually, hopefully over time, you get to this stage that you're at, which is sort of like, well, I would call like out and proud, right? Like I'm sober. This is why, like I'm all about it. Answer any questions you have. Like this is who I am. It's important to me, right? And so when you think about it that way, you have like the opportunity to be inclusive, just like you might for like a vegetarian, right? I have a friend who's vegan. And so every time I suggest we're going to do something like, hey, let's grab dinner, I always look at places before I do that, because I don't want to be not inclusive, and I don't want them to have to say, oh, I can't have that, because that makes people feel defensive and uncomfortable. And so I think like if people say to me like, oh, what's your husband's name? I don't get to just say like, I don't have one. I have to out myself. Whereas if somebody just said, are you married? What's your partner's name? They give me the opportunity. I don't actually have to out myself. But I do when they say, where's your husband? What does he do? And then I have to like correct them and then out myself. So I think like having those thoughts about talking with your friends or family and relationships where people are vegetarian or people are sober, and how we can do that without, needing to be woke and be all weird about it, but just to be like, oh, this is a way I can invite someone to hang out with me and not make them feel uncomfortable because I don't know what they're up to, what their choices are.
And I think when you think about that language, you invite people to be really authentic and in deep relationship with you, because you're immediately signaling, right? Like I haven't made assumptions about you. And now you get to tell me about your life in a way that feels good for you. And you when I don't know if this is the same for you, but if somebody isn't in an assumption mode to me, then I'm like, you're a safe person. You're safe for me to be around. You're going to be maybe a little bit more supportive than somebody who I need to correct and then explain. And it makes me want to be more of myself with you. So I think when we think about sometimes that like woke or, I have to change everything about just how I would normally live, you're inviting people to a deep, authentic space with you. And that's when people feel really loved and want to spend time with you and do anything for you, when we create community.
Yeah. And I think practice is probably what it takes, right? It's like, maybe I am used to when people come over offering them a very specific drink. Instead, I could just say like, are you thirsty? Is there anything I can get you? This is what I have in my fridge. Milk. But with practice, I think it can become normal so that it doesn't feel like I'm making like this big concession about how I approach things. So instead of asking people that I meet at a conference or at a work event, like, do you want to have a drink? Knowing that I have another way to say that, I think the more you say it, the easier it gets probably. And you probably do it. I guess you do it without even really thinking about it. I don't know. I'm hoping that.
I mean, when you're coming from a place of like, you've been the one impacted, right?
Yeah. You think about it differently.
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I think so.
I hope so.
Just thinking about it a little differently.
Yeah. I like that for you.
But I think, initially, if you're somebody that is thinking about it, right? Some people would call it sober curious, is when you're starting to explore
wait a
some of that. Have you heard that phrase before? Sober curious?
No, what does that? I mean, I can imagine what that means, but tell me what that means. I don't like, I'm like hamster curious. Like I haven't had one in a long time. I used to have a hamster. He was cute. It's been a while. I'm wondering if people still have them as pets. No one I know has a hamster. So I'm hamster curious. Is that kind of what it's like? I mean,
I don't know. I've never been hamster curious.
Well, you haven't lived.
That's probably fair.
It's just like for people who are interested in what the journey would be like or what their life would be like.
Right. I think it's you start to examine your own relationship with alcohol.
Oh, okay.
And wondering, what do I want that to look like? And maybe it changes a little bit. Maybe it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. I think for some people it does. For me, it does. I know myself. But that I started in a place of curiosity around what would my life look like without it. And there are moments where I was like, wow, okay, what would really change? And then there are other moments where you envision these milestones of your life and wonder, am I going to be able to do this? I mean, I shared with you, I'm getting married in, a couple months. And if you had asked me in my 20s or even early 30s, like, can you not drink at your wedding? I would have thought that's insane behavior. I would have never thought that would be what I would be doing.
Slapped me if I had asked you that. Just like, shut your mouth. It's a ridiculous question. Oh,
probably.
Gross.
I mean, but yeah, exactly. Growth. And now I'm like, I'm going to have all these different options, and I'm going to, again, have the entirety of the memory so clear because it won't be from a place of, alcohol being part of it. But I think when you're sober curious, you start evaluating, could I go to Mardi Gras and not drink? Could I go to this concert and not drink? Could I go to an SEC tailgate and not drink? And in that moment, it feels very overwhelming of I'm going to be giving up everything. And for me, it was really the practice of listening to other people. I may have shared this with you. I was able to learn in a really loving community. The employer I had before my current one had all these different extracurricular groups, and one of them was called Sober Force. And it was a space for alcoholics, sober, curious people, and people who were supportive or in relationship with people who maybe experienced different kinds of problematic drinking. And so I just started going to those to just explore. I was in a safe place and talking with other people and listening to experiences that I found resonated, and learning from their wisdom was very affirming in taking one day at a time. I don't need to think about, I mean, at the time I was like, how can I think about not drinking at my wedding? Girlfriend wasn't even in a relationship. Why am I thinking about that? Like,
we call that anxiety.
why am I thinking about that? You know? Yeah. We call it anxiety.
Hey.
And I think that, yeah, I think there are so many groups out there now that can be places of resource that are different. I mean, initially when I started asking myself these questions, I was immediately like, well, Alcoholics Anonymous isn't for me, right? I'm not that kind. And it comes from a place of like judgment and control. And then when you actually talk to people, you're like, we're the same. We're the same. And it may look different in our lives. And we may not have the exact same story, but it doesn't mean I'm any more in control of this or any better than anybody else. But I think there are other ways to do it. And one that I want to shout out is the Luckiest Club. It is awesome. They do like all kinds of online groups, but maybe AA doesn't work for you or some part of that doesn't resonate with you, but you want to be in community with others. And I think they're just starting like a 90-day trial for people who maybe new or need a reset. And I think those are the kinds of things that are coming more and more popular that people can find if they know where to look. That's the hard part. And so I appreciate you for even making space for this conversation, because I think that's how we start to learn some of these resources.
And I think knowing someone can be a huge resource. Like just that's, I mean, and partially why I think probably in a program like AA, they connect you with someone, right? Knowing someone that is doing something you want to do. So like, I really want to learn how to curl, still haven't made it to the ice sheet to do that. If I knew someone though, who curled on a regular basis, I bet that I would have tried it by now. So I'm just saying. So like knowing someone who's sober and willing to talk about it, willing to share, is like a great resource. And so that's partially why I wanted to chat about this, is because I want everybody who's listening to call you. I'm going to put your phone number in the show notes. It's going to blow up.
Yeah. Well, and you know, one of the coolest experiences I had about maybe like 7 months in, I was going to a football tailgate at an SEC big time tailgate party. And I was like, this is the first time I am not going to make up a lie about why I'm not drinking. I'm just going to say, no, thank you. Or just like, hey, I don't drink. And that was kind of like my little goal for that. That was not something that anybody else put on me, just me being like, I want to feel more confident in this decision. And so I go to a tailgate, it's in a morning, and somebody immediately, it's like, we've got mimosas, right? Everybody said, let me get you a mimosa. And I said, oh, no, thanks. I don't drink. Can I just get some orange juice? And this, man turns around, who I've met a few times, a family friend of my partner's. And he looks at me, he goes, did I just hear you say you don't drink? And I immediately felt this knot in my stomach of, here comes this confrontation that I have prepared in my head is going to be terrible. And he goes, hang on just a second. He puts up his finger and he starts digging in his pocket and he pulls out his 22-year chip he was like, this is so cool. I just want to show you this. Like, I'm really proud of this. And it was a moment again for me that I was reminded of the deep authenticity that I invite with other people by being who I really am. And now when I see him, I'm like, this is incredible. Like, we have this connection. We have this thread that other people may not totally understand, but we can talk about it, and we can talk about it in a way that feels safe and loving. And also just immediately, I'm like, I know you. I know so much more about you and how strong you are.
Yeah.
So I think that was like a moment in this journey that I was incredibly proud of. And just a moment that I was preparing myself for the worst.
Yeah. Sounds like an opportunity. Like, sounds like one of those situations you walk away from and then you reflect on and go, oh, I'm so grown, so much personal growth. Like, I said the thing, like, no, like, as of these experiences as you get older is that like, you can be like proud of yourself and do something and be like, oh my God, look at me. I'm so grown. I'm doing the things, right? Like I'm taking accountability. I'm apologizing. I'm owning my shit. I'm whatever it is, right? Feels good to be.
It does.
Like that level of comfortable with yourself and your mistakes and your progress and the things you want for your life. And that's probably one of the best things I think about aging is just that level of comfort that you get with yourself that allows you to be that level of vulnerable and mixed with that level of confident, right?
Yeah. And I think the reason behind that too for me was I want to be comfortable for this because I want to make space for even one other person to feel okay if their relationship with alcohol has to change or they want it to change. I didn't want anybody in my circle or who I had some kind of like touch with to feel like they don't know anybody. And I said, so I've got to start being brave like right now because I want this space for other people who want it to. And not in a way of like everybody has to change and reevaluate their relationship. That's not the case at all. But posting about it and sharing about it, I think has, again, opened me up to people who were like, oh, I didn't know this about you. Like, can I ask you questions? Or like I talked about her, but this is my absolute favorite book about it. It's called We Are the Luckiest, the surprisingly magical journey of a sober life. I've shared about that, and other people I know that have read it have found some kind of gift in it. I didn't write that. I wish I had, but
you're like, this is a book. It's been really meaningful and impactful. I wrote it. It's mine. You're like, oh, it's just very deep. It's made a lot of change in my life. Oh, look, it's by me.
Oh, yeah, totally. I posted it like maybe a year and a half ago, and somebody who I really don't know like all that well from New Orleans, but just messaged me the other day and said, hey, I want you to know I'm 1 year without alcohol. And the only reason that I even thought about it was you had posted that book and I ordered it. And I thought, this is a moment of like being vulnerable and sharing like online where things live forever and knowing, again, people can make all kinds of assumptions about me. But I thought if even one person walks away from this and something changes, like I've had that, people have reached out to me for that. It's certainly not been alone. So that is what I hope in talking about this, that it becomes more of a normalized conversation and for people to think through what they want that relationship to be.
Yeah. I wish I could say I'm changing lives. Reach out to me if you have crow's feet, because I do, and I'm okay to talk about it. I just want everyone to feel like I just change one life, maybe one person with crow's feet. Please call me. I don't have a book, but I'm happy to commiserate about it. See, my stuff is not like nearly as powerful. I just have like some face wrinkles that I'm willing to chat about. So,
well, I know how much you love vulnerability, but so let me but you're the platform giving space to this, right?
Yeah, no, for sure.
You've made space for lots of people to explore and to think through. So you should.
It's a good way to look at it.
Think about that in a different way.
Yeah. Also, if you have crow's feet, hit me up.
And that too.
Listen, normally I would end this podcast in like a very polite manner, like trying to say something that sort of like leads us to an end. But I'm 43 and I had a Diet Coke, so I got to pee. This is like, I'm just being real. I also see you're having a LaCroix, which means you are going to have to pee soon too. You know, we're middle-aged. We got to pee every couple hours. So
Middle-aged. I'm living to 100.
Okay. So you're pre-middle age. Is that?
Yeah.
I like that. I want to be that. Okay.
I'm making it to 3 numbers.
You are really?
Saying.
You
3
want
numbers.
that?
100. 100%.
Really? Gosh.
Yeah.
I'll keep my eyes peeled because on the Today Show, they do the Smuckers jam and the people who are like 100 years old on there. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
You don't? I don't. I thought they.
No, but now I got to go look it up.
Yeah, they do like this segment, and it's sponsored by like Smucker's marmalade or whatever, and then they're like, "Happy birthday to Beatrice Susan Smith. She's 101 today," and they show like her face on the side of the jam. What? You've never seen? All right.
No, but now I want to be a jam girly.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. This is the goal. They always say that like you're the best looking, best version of yourself and most likely to like be a model when you're like in your teens or 20s. And like we've both missed that. So we could be Smuckers ladies instead. Is like that dream is still out there.
We're coming for you. Big jelly, big milk. We've covered a lot of big industries today.
101 orange marmalade. Here I come. I'm ready for it. I'm picking orange marmalade because then I don't get any seeds in my teeth. So you see how I'm connected everything? It's like a circle. Jenna, thank you for being here today. And I will certainly, if it's okay with you, I'll put your Instagram handle or something in the show notes in case folks do want to reach out. Also, I do recommend Jenna. She's a great person. So thank you for being here. This is Hot Flashbacks. We're out.